Well, thanks for joining us here today. We're now pleased to be joined by Bert Johnson, owner and operator of Grays Harbor Raceway. And Bert, first off, thank you for taking time to chat with us today and to kind of give our promoters some educational background here.
So how do you want me to address that for you, Chris? What would you like to know? Give me some specifics and I'll answer the question for you.
Yes, absolutely. Well, for those that may not know, you've been racing for a long, long time, obviously, and been a very successful promoter out at Grays Harbor and really kept that track moving in the right direction for a couple of years now. And kind of give us a quick background on your history and experience in promoting at Grays Harbor and other places.
Sure. So we'll go back a little bit farther than that. So, at 5 years old, my parents were taking me to a track out here in the Northwest called Sky Valley Speedway, which doesn't exist anymore. It's now a Fred Meyer's, which if anybody's familiar in the Northwest, Fred Meyer's is pretty popular out here. Anyway, long story short, was always involved in some aspect of racing. My career is, I ended up in the automotive field and things started moving forward. Picked up my first ride, I think, in 1980, and everything has moved forward from there. So sprint cars are always my thing. I've been in a couple of midgets, never driven anything but an open wheel car. So, I mean, I don't know that experience on that end of it, and that's okay. Those are awesome type of racing cars also, but my background is open wheel. With that said, I put together with a few groups out here, a few other people, an organization called WOW, Washington Open Wheel, and that was back in the 80s, and that was more of a pavement group, and we did a couple of dirt shows, and that's when I got reintroduced to dirt tracks, and my first dirt track that I ever raced at was Grays Harbor Raceway. And kind of fell in love with the place. And even though I did traveling on the West Coast, really, I always loved the dirt. And oddly enough, I probably won more pavement races than I did dirt races. But I don't know. It was just one of those things, as you go. So, and then later on, I worked with a bunch of our cohorts, and we were racing up at Skagit Speedway, which is another very popular and successful racetrack out here in the Northwest. And we started another organization at that time with limited sprints, and that was called WESCO, which was it was the acronym for that was the Washington Economy Racing or Sprint Car Racing Organization. And then from there, I got approached many years later by a gentleman that had just purchased Port Angeles Speedway, which is a pavement track. And he liked what we were doing with the Wesco group. But regardless, he said, hey, how would you like to promote a speedway? So didn't take me long, and here we are today. And from there, I've worked at Evergreen Speedway here in the Northwest. And that's another county fairgrounds facility, and it's got multiple racetracks in it, 3/8, 5/8, figure eight, fifth mile, pretty adaptable track. That's all paved as we go. And then at that point, I jumped over with Steve Beitler up at Skagit Speedway and started working with him up there, mostly outside sales, and helped him in the pit area, teching cars and things like that. And then at some point, I'm trying to remember the exact year, I think it was 2013, for Grays Harbor opened up. And actually, Steve and I both bid on the facility. And interesting enough, we were the final two candidates. And Steve got the track, and then turned around and brought me on board as the face of Grays Harbor Raceway. And then a few years back, 5 years ago, I believe, I bought Steve out, and I've been here since 2014, and still going pretty strong.
Well, and when we talked before here, Bert, that you're as the operator and primary promoter of Grays Harbor Raceway, you are a type of promoter that knows that you're gonna have to spend some money to make that money back. You're gonna have to go ahead and get that that advertising out there. But it is a scary thing to set a marketing budget sometimes. But when you look over your entire season that you have at a speedway, what goes into what you determine to be a marketing budget for spending money on advertising and different avenues of marketing there for you?
So for us, I had the advantage of working for Steve for quite a few years. So I was already on the in on the side that Steve had already created up at Skagit and brought that down to Grays Harbor. So it was a little bit easier there for me to step right in. But some of the things that have happened out there in your budgeting areas is you got to know all your utilities, of course, and your outlay for your payroll. What are our payouts going to be for the entire year? You don't look at just one event. You've got to put that whole package together. And then you got to look at your marketing aspect of where you want to go. And as time has gone on, if we go back 20 years, newspaper was a great thing to advertise in, and there was a lot of publications around. They really don't exist anymore. So we don't at this time utilize any newspapers any longer. So our marketing, when we go out to promote us here at Grays Harbor Raceway, we've done digital, which we just started getting into that this last year, and we've moved forward with that. We do a lot of Facebook. We do direct mail. There's a lot of little things I'm already forgetting, but you just keep planning those out. But you also have to have the resources on where these people and how they're coming to you with the marketing that you're doing out there. And obviously, Chris, with My Race Pass, you guys have some pretty good analytics that you can look at, and that has helped me. I mean, and this year you guys boosted that up more. And when we're doing our online ticket sales, for example, we get to visualize where are these people coming from. And for me, everybody's familiar with Grays Harbor Raceway. We're off the beaten path. We're not on the I-5 corridor here on the West Coast. So you've got to drive 25 miles off of I-5 to get to us. And so we draw from a very, very large area. We have people coming in from Oregon because we're not that far away from Oregon. And we have people coming from the north, and we pull it all in. So going back to the analytics, when we're looking at the marketing, where's our customers coming from? And then you start targeting some of those areas. And unfortunately, I can't give you the exact precise thing on how we do it, but I mean, example, this weekend we have what we call our Modified Nationals. It's the 24th annual. And we do a lot of advertising online on that. So we're reaching out and to almost Southern Oregon all the way up to the Canadian border, and we will pull people in from all those areas. More centralized, our biggest pull is going to come from a 50-mile radius, but you still have to get out there and promote yourself to these other customers and introduce them to some new things. One marketing item that we're doing this weekend is it's a Friday and Saturday show, and for us, Fridays, like I said, we're quite a bit off the beaten path, and to get to us takes a little bit of journey. Anybody that's familiar with Grays Harbor Raceway, if you're coming from the north, you got to fight Seattle traffic, then you got to fight Tacoma traffic, and then you got to fight Fort Lewis traffic, and then you got Olympia traffic, and all that comes into play. It takes a while to get here on a Friday. Saturdays, a little bit easier as we go. So tomorrow we're doing what we call our $5 night. So we tried it once last year and packed the house at $5. So, as a promoter, I would reach out to other promoters and say, don't be afraid to give that away occasionally, not every week, of course. But our big show for this one is on Saturday. So we have all qualifying on Friday, but we can introduce some people that might not normally come to an event because maybe it doesn't quite fit their budget. But for $5, $20 bill basically brings a family of four in to get some great entertainment. Yep. And at that point, you have to supply them, obviously, with food and beverage because we don't allow outside food and beverage to come in. And you're making it up, basically. And one of the other things we're using, Chris, is I'm going back and plugging you guys a little bit, but we got introduced to online ticket purchasing in the COVID year. So we were allowed to race, and this is bizarre, but we weren't allowed to have fans. So how they figured that out, I don't know, but it was okay. We
survived. Got it. Yeah.
We survived. We did pay-per-view, and that got us through. But what had to happen was they didn't want money transferring hands. They wanted online ticket purchasing to stop the spread, I guess, is how they were trying to look at it. And today we know that that was all bull and didn't matter on that point. But with that, we got introduced to My Race Pass and online ticketing. And then moving into the following year, we just introduced it to our fans. So what we do on that aspect is we offer we call it a discount. So if you buy, and it's not really a discount, but I mean, online, for example, on our standard night, it's $15. But if you come to our gate, it's $17. And I look at it in an aspect of I've got to bring in some employees to handle it. I've got to have my security at the front gate. So all those things come into play. But if you got an online ticket, they can walk up with their phone and we scan them and boom, they're in the door and away they go. So it really makes it easy to bring people in quickly. And especially on a big show, if you want to wait in line, I don't advise it. Just get your ticket online. I can get you in the door pretty quick.
Yeah, absolutely. It's one of the major advantages of online ticketing in general. There's that quickness of getting in and out the door there. And I want to touch on something that you mentioned there a second ago about having to give the fans the food and you don't allow outside drink and beverages and food. Promoters may not think about that when they first take over a promoting job. They think about the budget to go ahead and market, the advertising for the racetrack. But then you got to have the internal stuff like food. How do you know when you have too much food on hand, too little food on hand, the budget for your concession stands? What goes into the thought process of that?
Yeah, so that's a great question. And again, I have an advantage of being at the Raceway for many, many years. So I started this, and I'm going to go to our beer. So we handle alcohol. And the first thing I did was set up an Excel spreadsheet. And we didn't really know what we were going to bring in, but we kind of knew, here's the standard event or this is a special promotion event. So we, brought in plenty of beer. And what I do with that Excel spreadsheet is I kept track of every single flavor, as I call them, that we had through. We tracked every single serving. So we get through the first year. Next year comes in, let's do something pretty, similar, but bump it up just a little bit for each event. Well, now I've got over, 14 years worth of data that I look at. So in a traditional event, I can figure things out, provided, again, that you called it right. And I'll give you an example. Our World of Outlaw show last year was over the top. I mean, it was phenomenal out here. And I didn't plan on it being as large as it was. I didn't realize that everything we were putting into our marketing was super successful. So I almost ran out of everything. I mean, and what I mean by that, I had plenty of food left over, but we have what we call last call out here before the main event starts. I did run out of beer right before the main event started. And I guess that was good timing and coincidental, but it would have been nice to have quite a bit more on hand. Now, back to that, same thing on the food. We track the food, not so much on exact precise, did I sell X amount of candy bars or this kind of candy bar? I don't do it that way. But, we have everything on computer as it prints out of the cash register. So I get a very good reading every single night on what is sold, and we can move that into the next event and the next year. It works out pretty well.
Perfect. Yeah, that's one thing that, kind of goes by the wayside sometimes. You get so focused on getting the event promoted, you think, oh, I got concession stands to do. I got to get this set and taken care of here. But when it does come time for the individual events, you mentioned you have your set price. I think it was $17 to get on race day there. What makes you determine, what that margin needs to be for a ticket price to make that profit? Because we always hear that, in racing, you're not going to make money. You can't make money as a promoter. It's hard to do. It's hard to do, but you can still do it. You can still make a good profit in racing if you have that budget set. So for you guys, what goes into determining what your prices are on race day for weekly events, for special events, whatever it might be?
So you got to look at what your market's going to be on your fans. Mm-hmm. And with Grays Harbor, we're in an area that was traditionally a timber country area, and Aberdeen is a little city to the west of us, about 20 some miles away, and that's their logo as you pull in is timber capital of the world. And as everybody knows, in the Northwest, about 20 years ago, there was a spotted owl that happened out here, or maybe it was a little longer than that. Mm-hmm. And certain areas of logging got cut down, and that hurt the economy out here tremendously. So it's never really, from what I understand, recovered 100% from all of that. So our market here directly close by within a 20-mile radius is pretty tight. So you can't go out there and say, well, I'm going to charge $20 tonight, and then all of a sudden you have no fans coming in. You have to know what you're available to do. And again, like I mentioned on the $5 night, I would rather have people in the grandstands enjoying an event than charging a large number and having a small amount of people in there, because it all rolls downhill. I mean, you're the more you can build, the more it's going to grow. And I hope that kind of answered your question.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And you mentioned some of the unique things you do for once in a while, like the $5 night. I know here in Nebraska, when I-80 Speedway was open, Joe Kaziski, we had a night a couple of years ago. It was Facebook Friday night, and essentially it was we were trying to get our numbers up for Facebook likes to help with our marketing partners as well. And so we told the fans, you show us you like us on Facebook, you get in for free. Now, that wasn't a special event, that we weren't going to have the Outlaws in that night. It was a weekly show, but still, it was a great way to go ahead and do that. And fans loved it, packed the stands, and of course, you made some money off concession stands. So there's always that back way to think about making that profit there. When it comes to individual events, you mentioned there are some nights for you. I think graduation weekend in the area is kind of a lower car count, so maybe you don't dump any advertising into that night at all. But what else kind of makes you determine which nights to really up your marketing budget for advertising and kind of pull back a little bit?
Well, on the graduation night, let's go there for a second, and then we'll get into your question here. So, sorry about that. What happens to us is we talked about employees, and I have a great working relationship with the local high school out here. So we probably, and I don't know the exact number on top of my head, but it is probably close to 20 young folks that work for us. And they get some credit for school for coming in and working and things like that. And they're paid. But where I guess I'm going is it's tough on graduation night, because you lose a good number of your staff that's in your concessions. You lose their parents. You lose drivers, because maybe it's their son or daughter or their brother or sister. So at this point moving forward, I really have to think about whether I really want to be open on that particular night or just go dark.
Yeah.
The staff we have, they work hard and they do a good job, but it's pretty stressful too. So I mean, it might behoove us to take a night off, is what I'm saying, going down the road on that. So
yeah.
It's always something. But now, your question was, how do you determine where I'm going to put in for different events? Well, if we start at the top, our biggest event of the year is the World of Outlaws in September. So we do put a lot into advertising, and we're trying to reach as many as we can on that. Friends of mine calling, sorry.
Okay.
Anyhow, you have to pick and choose. So there are certain ones where we go down to the bottom side that no matter what you do, you're just not going to drive them in here. And you just mentioned it on graduation night. I could triple probably the advertising, still wouldn't bring any more people in here, because there's that window, and you want to celebrate these young people for graduating. I mean, we got to, congratulate them, and job well done. However many years it took them to get there, here they go. So, but again, it's for me, it's just been the experience of the amount of years and how we want to pump it up. I'm going to go backwards just a little bit. You mentioned with Joe that, he did something on Facebook, and that's what we did on our $5 nights too. We encouraged our fans that are on Facebook to share our ad. So, or whatever it might have been on that. So if we got 500 shares on the last one, we'd make a $5 night. And to be honest, that was a mistake, because we thought it would take a few days to get there. It took 4 hours. So that's how fast it went, which is phenomenal. And that's great. But, there's another one I learned. I was like, well, next year we can try something different and maybe make it 1,500 people or something to get them out there. What we did, this is our second one of the year that we have done. So the first one, what we did is we wanted to bump up our likes on our Facebook site, similar to what you were talking about. And so once we hit that certain number, we opened the door for the $5 night, and you got to pre-plan it. I mean, with that said, on the $5 night, you've got to make it happen regardless. I mean, you got to take care of these people because just if you missed it by 50 people or 100 people, I mean, you got to give it to them. I mean, you want those people at the door. So, but back to that budget you want to put in a particular event, you just kind of have to go by your past experience. I mean, for a new promoter going into a track, hopefully there's enough information that they've received from the prior promoter on where to go and things like that. As for how much and where to make it happen. If you don't put anything into your event, you're gonna die. I mean, eventually it's just gonna go away, and you got to stay up on it. I mean, not to say how old I am, but I'm older than people think. And with that said, I have a great guy. His name's Sean Gilbert. You met him down at WIPA, and he's our announcer. And he takes care of all of our social media, and he does a great job on that. We talk basically daily and say, here's where we want to go and things like that. And he goes, I got it. And he puts things together, but we work very closely on how we want to put that marketing out there.
Yeah, and you mentioned that the days of just opening the doors and expecting fans to show up, those are long gone. This is, 1990s have passed. There's kids are staying home playing video games these days and online, and so yeah, you have to have something to dump into advertising to get the word. And in this sport, spending money will help you make that money back. Obviously, it takes some time. It's slow and steady progress there. But to wrap things up here, Bert, obviously WARPA coming up again this year. Details out yet on that and where people can go, and what's the scoop on WARPA this year?
So WARPA will be in Portland at the Sheridan Inn at the airport. And just off the top of my head, I think it's the 17th and 18th. It's always traditionally the week before Thanksgiving, and that helps a lot of people remember the date as we get out there. We will have information out here shortly. What we have done is we've gathered our information over the years, and I've been there for quite a few years, and we send it out via email. Now, if somebody wants to get more information, they can go get a hold of our racetrack at Grays Harbor Raceway, and I'll give you the number if that's okay to give out.
Yeah, please do. Yeah.
260-482-4374. And I would be very happy to send information or get you on our list as we go, and get you everything that you need for that. Let's go the other way for a second. You came out for the first time last year. Did you enjoy WARPA?
I did. Great time. I loved it. It was a great way to connect with current My Race Pass users and the ones that aren't familiar with us there as well too. And for the promoters that are watching the video now that may not be aware of what WARPA is, the Western Auto Racing Promoters Association. It's a trade show with also a banquet going on as well to award some promoters, primarily focused on Northwest, but you do have promoters from the Midwest that come out too as well. And I mean, there's no reason why someone can't do that because it's still an educational piece for you guys.
It is, and we do it a little differently. If you've been to some of the other promoter shows, you should be able to gather information no matter where you go. I mean, it might not be everything, and WARPA's the same way. You're not going to get everything you need out of that show, but you better be able to bring home some pertinent information every single time. But we bring everybody into one room and I'm talking about your vendors, everybody. We're all in one big room. And last year's attendance was, I believe, over 135 people, and we're all gathered in. So everybody's involved. I mean, there are certain shows, depending on where you want to go, it's set up a little differently, but we want our vendors involved with our tracks and our tracks involved with our vendors and our speakers. We always try and bring in some good quality speakers and good information. I mean, this year, again, I know we're going to be talking about marketing and going back into the digital stuff again this year. Tom Glithrow is our MC. He does a phenomenal job, and it's just fun. We just have a great time out there.
Absolutely. Looking forward to it again this year, Bert. Well, we thank you for your time here today. And I think the number one thing that we can take away here today is set that budget, crunch some numbers, make sure you know what you're getting into ahead of the season to have a successful year, essentially. So, Bert, thank you so much for your time, and we'll look forward to talking with you here soon.
Sounds great. Thank you.